hello. Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us after your busy day, or perhaps still in the midst of it. I think I'm just going to dive right in because, time is limited and we have things. We are recording. We did have, 70 people sign up to join us. We know people can't always come live. So we are recording this, but purely just for the people who registered in this space. But if you don't want any part of yourself to be visible, you can turn your screen off and that will work in order to do that. Okay, I'm going to start with a really brief introduction. My name's Jade. I'm the Director of Learning at the Outdoor Learning Store. We're a charitable non-profit dedicated to outdoor learning, tools, equipment and resources. And I'm really here just to hold space for these amazing educators and creators who are here to share this connection to water and maybe pipe up every so often. I'm here joining you, and this is a picture I took alongside the banks of Sinhuinquitqua, the Swift River, the Columbia River as it's known in English. And I took this today after we'd had 50 centimeters of snow, which was rapidly melting. And this is the traditional territory of the Snipes, the people of the bull trout. And these shores and these hills and mountains and places also have stories from the Shukwepen, the Okanagan Silks and the Tanaha First Nations. The Tanaha call this the Chickadee River, the Mishkakis River in Tanaha. And I think today my land acknowledgement, as I was out there walking with the river today, was not just for the people and for the knowledge from people like Shelley Boyd, who've given me so much knowledge in particular relation to this place, but just the river herself and the land herself today. I've had a very stressful couple of weeks, and just knowing that the solace that was provided with the opportunity to walk alongside a river and for her to take what I couldn't carry anymore and take it with her downstream, I'm just incredibly grateful for that. As we move in, I wanted to just take 15 seconds. This was the sound of snow turning to rain today. And I wonder if for your own personal land acknowledgement, whether that's sharing it in the chat or just taking a moment to express gratitude for where we are or where you are, and just to listen to the raindrops. To maybe take a deep breath and let go of whatever your day was like today and to come into this place. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to show you the trailer of this amazing film, Changing Course, A River's Journey of Reconnection, I should say, that we're going to learn a bit more about, and I'll let it speak for itself.
Columbia River is a very important part of our culture, our being. That big water is so important.
The issue with the way it's structured in terms of governance is really not so much about the water, it's about what the water produces, which is revenue, money. And if money becomes the issue, then you're not going to do what's right for the water or for the people or for the fish.
Enough is enough. We've had enough negative, enough impacts to the environment.
There's no question that climate change has already begun to impact the Columbia Basin.
That's what we're trying to do in the Columbia Basin, is to collect the data sets to do a water balance approach for subsequent water budgets that will be required by communities in allocating water.
Canada and the United States, we're neighbors. No getting away from that, and we have to work together in order to protect the environment.
The fact is that unless we change our approach of having the human being as the all-powerful, that we're going to continue to get ourselves into trouble.
Each of us is a natural system, and I began to realize that the freedom of the water was no longer in many circumstances, and that of course reverberated out to the lack of freedom for the fish, the lack of freedom for the ungulates, the lack of freedom for the trees, the sedges, for anything that was living in the ecological culture that had evolved because of the free running water. And that was why I think I wanted to fully understand why a culture would have taken all of that away.
Really powerful stuff. And we're going to dive in a little bit more to speaking about it. And opening first is Andrea Mann.
Hi, everybody. Jade, would you like to put our presentation on for a minute? Thank you. So getting started here today, I just wanted to give the little origin story of how this came to be. Beyond Jade, there's also two other collaborators here, Jonathan O'Riordan. I'm going to need coaching on how to pronounce it properly. And I spoke after I got the chance to see his documentary at the Capitol Theatre in Nelson, and perhaps some of you got to see that as well. And then Etienne and I have been collaborating on learning with and through Indigenous knowledge and with Indigenous people together for about 4 years. And so that is an extension of this collaboration. And all of these pieces are coming together today. I really appreciate the beautiful territory acknowledgement, Jade, and I will, I guess, sit within a similar acknowledgement, except that I live on a bit further down on a tributary of the Columbia, just off of Chichewiha-Kiamaloop, which is Cottonwood Creek in Nelson, BC. I would like to start right off the top here that just by saying that Indigenous knowledge is very important in this presentation, and none of the four of us are Indigenous, and that is a very different frame than we might be used to learning, and that will kind of unfold as we move through the material. But I will say that each of us has relationships and accountabilities to many Indigenous people, and that those might we can't actually expose them all for you because that's all we would do. We're getting to this place now where if we're doing the work itself is very complicated, relationally driven, and we can't let all our conversation be about proving those connections. But if anyone has any feedback for anything that we share, each of us are most open to that input, and we will also happily answer questions that you may have about how we are each related to the material. So let's dive into the slides and see where that leads us. So our thank you today needs to go to the two organizations that funded the film. So that's the Gail O'Riordan Climate and the Arts Foundation, as well as Creatively United. And I want to thank the Outdoor Learning Store, of course, and our funder, Etienne and I collaborate through a project called From the Heart, and Vaidea is our funder for that. So let's keep going here. And I would just love to hear from John a little bit about what story you might like to share of how the film came about, what you enjoyed most about putting it together. And there's 2 slides, but maybe instead of sitting on the slides, we'll focus more closely on Jonathan's face. So thank you for making this beautiful film, John.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. I should mention that there was also some funding support from the provincial government, but in no way did the provincial government have any direct role in the documentary. That was entirely created by myself, my colleague Francis Littman, with Creatively United, and with our videographer, Bowden Duval. A few years ago, I wrote a book called The Climate Nexus, and that was a story of the links between water, energy, and food. And in my mind, water is the hub of the nexus. So if we get water wrong, we have serious implications for energy and food. And so the whole idea of the climate nexus was to harmonize policies and relationships between the 3 components of the nexus. So the Columbia documentary really is an exploration of how the climate nexus deals with the Columbia. And I chose the Columbia River as the exemplar for the nexus for two reasons. One is because I was with the BC Ministry of Environment for many, many years. And in that, I was the senior executive responsible for water management and a lot to do with the Columbia River and the Columbia River Treaty. And secondly, I have a relationship with the Indigenous community in the Columbia, and I felt that their story was so badly treated in the lead up to the Columbia Treaty in the mid-60s. And that in a year or years of reconciliation under the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights, it was important to recast the story of Indigenous people in the Columbia and have their voice more fully heard. So that's the background to it. And I was encouraged by the negotiation team at the BC government to put a film out that provided a context for what is going on with the negotiations between the US and Canada. So the film isn't specifically about the treaty, but it provides the history of the river before the treaty, before it was dammed, the implications of the treaty, both positive in terms of benefits and negatives in terms of environmental costs. But more importantly, it looks to the future and sets out messages of hope that by reconnecting the river with nature, we can have a more complete and more sustainable future for the Columbia than is currently the case. So I'm not a videographer. I've never done a documentary like this. I'm a policy wonk, but I have thoroughly enjoyed and learned a lot by creating this film. And I'm pleased to review it with you today. The one more comment I'll make is that the film will be formally released on March 22nd, which is World Water Day. So it's in roughly 3 weeks' time. And there will be a number of marketing material which will lead to release and allow you to see the full film, and it will be on all the websites around. But this educational package, it has been so beautifully put together by the team here, is an important component of the documentary and the material that will be associated with the release. So thanks, Andrea and your team, for a wonderful support for this, and I hope that I've given you some background to the story.
That's great. Thank you so much, John. So maybe we'll have the slides back, Jade. There's a lot of context here, so we'll just go, to the From the Heart story. So Etienne and I are part of this network that started in 2019, and in a really quick summary, each year we have a theme. We work with youth, we work with Indigenous community members, and we work with artists. And in the past, our participants have been about half Indigenous and half non-Indigenous. Sometimes it's a few more Indigenous. And it's all about building community, learning together, and then also sharing that learning with the public. Our current focus is From the Heart with the Waters, which is what inspired me to reach out to John. And it's just one of the I guess, topic areas we've been focusing on. But as you can see, we've carved some paddles. We have actually released a calendar. We've been doing a lot of soup, tea, and stories. So that's about nourishing community. And this work fits in that, and also will connect to some hopeful collaborations that we have in mind with the Outdoor Learning Store and CBean for the future. And that will still unfold. Next slide, please. So Etienne, do you mind sharing how this fits in? Because not everyone is in BC. With your teaching assignment right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andrea. And thanks, Jonathan, for the documentary. It's really, really excellent. And I feel like it does so much that I need. For my courses, we we watched it today in my class, and the kids really were soaking it in. The courses in BC is going through a big change right now, where classes where all students graduating need 4 credits of a really like fully Indigenous content course. So that's a semester-long course. And we're in the midst of this big change where teachers are kind of like coming together to be able to do this, the teachers that exist, the new teachers that are coming in, and everybody's sort of coming together to find really solid materials to teach this, materials that are respectful to local needs, and materials that are respectful to authentic Indigenous voices. So I think this documentary really fits in because there's so many voices, Indigenous voices that are present and I feel like very well represented. And yeah, I think it's really a treasure to have, judging by what I saw today.
All right, and I am also teaching one of these Indigenous required credit courses. I'm teaching, Etienne has, I think, English First Peoples, and I am teaching the more social studies focused one, which is Contemporary Indigenous Studies. And something that inspired me to reach out to CBEAN was this idea that when we learn about the land, we should also be learning about the stories of the land. And so one of the frames that feels important to me is environmental justice. So not that we just care for the water, but that we also contextualize that within knowledge that not everyone has access to clean water. In fact, water is even being used as a weapon in part of the world. And so looking ahead to World Water Day, their focus is water for peace. And I think that has applications no matter where we are, whether that's in BC or another Canadian province or south of the border. How are our relationships to water supportive of justice and peaceful outcomes? Let's go to the next slide. I'll try and be efficient. We have a lot of material here and we have shared it with all of you. So you are most welcome to look back at our notes and the slides and kind of fill in what we might be rushing through. So something that was really important to me in designing a curriculum document was that I really focus on appreciating the material because it is a beautiful resource. And also, as educators, it's really important that we never present anything without accommodating questions. And so I'm balancing appreciative inquiry with this idea of critical thinking, that any piece of media can't do it all. And so we have to have a view for what is present and what is absent, and how those voices are presented. So I'm trying to provide a balanced view. And that makes it more engaging for children and youth, for sure, because then they're not just passively receiving, they're also engaged in that process. Okay, and then this slide here, I guess, is kind of the core of what will become the curriculum document. It's still in process, and in fact, anything we receive from feedback from all of you will impact that as well. When I looked at the film, I saw those top 3 themes as very present, kind of like on the nose, the obvious things that were written into it. So you can learn a lot about reconciliation, stewardship, and governance just from hearing those speakers. And you don't actually have to dig too much deeper than that to have it be a really valuable learning experience. And then the curricular themes for me went to this place of more, what is the critical content? How can I, as an educator, make it really come alive, have it be a more extended focus? So Etienne's was, today and maybe a couple of other classes, whereas I've taught it this movie with, I guess, probably about 5 days. And then my current class, we're spending almost 4 weeks on it with related content. So I think what we'll do here is just take turns sharing a little bit about what we see as the sort of theme areas that we're specializing in. I think rather than doing it at the end, I'll just say that right now, my theme areas of focus are definitely reconciliation and reconnection. The dimensions of reconnection are endless in this storytelling. It's not just the river that's reconnecting. And yeah, so maybe we'll hear from Etienne first, I think, or actually it's Jade first. What connections did you see for stewardship?
Uneasy. I can't wait to hear everybody's perspectives. But for me, as someone who did a science degree and who has come from a very scientific background, and I love doing science with students of all ages, but particularly at the older grades where these really amazing practical tools that they can use to investigate the world around them. And I have had my worldview shifted, supported, cushioned, and held differently from now the Indigenous ways of knowing that have come into my life over the last 8 years. But I do believe that science and the scientific method and process is important. It's this way of being able to repeat something in the same places, the same thing, sorry, in different places, and do this strong comparison that takes for a moment before we do analysis, before we look at the bigger picture, but takes that heart just to the side for a moment so we can look, and then we can bring that heart back in through the analysis and through the ways that we implement those changes. But just testing water, looking at it, how does it change with temperature, with cycles? What differences do we see from this side of the bank to the other? And then how do we relate to that? So yeah, science is my passion here, and it just ties in so well with this amazing curriculum.
Thank you. Etienne, would you like to share? You're going to tag water stories?
Yeah, that's primarily my focus right now. We are looking at the power of stories in this Indigenous focused literature course. And I really like how stories go right to our core. And that's not just exclusive to Indigenous literature. I think that's all of us, but it's a lesson that we're focusing on right now. And being able to dive into the stories, so this documentary, really like pulling out those stories that have been forgotten and those that maybe need retelling, and those that need to be highlighted, and all surrounding the water. Water stories are this general theme that we're going to be looking at for a bit, and they really grab people in a way that just, like I said, brings them to their core. And it's pretty cool how much kids have to say about it. So yeah, it's been really cool, like getting them to go right to what they believe and the kind of beliefs that are around the Columbia River for this.
Mm-hmm. I will say that each of us has a breakout room towards the end of the session, so you'll get the chance to talk with either Jade, Etienne, Jonathan, or myself about more questions that you might have. And Etienne, maybe in that breakout room, you can share with them a little bit about your water animacy activity. So the writing from Water's View. Anyways, that one really inspired me. And John, in this slide, I was wondering if you would be open to speaking a little bit about this idea of governance and negotiation. Most of what we see of the Columbia River Treaty is, to my understanding, it's a lot of behind closed doors, but students are very curious to know how all of those different stakeholder views are balanced. So is there anything that you might be able to share with us?
Sure, Andrea. Well, first off, it should be clear that the treaty that was signed in 1964 doesn't actually have an end date. There is an agreement in the treaty, though, that after 60 years, which is 2024, there will be a change in the flood control arrangements in the existing treaty. So the treaty does need to be renewed in 2024, but it doesn't end. There's no ending clause. Mm-hmm. So governance, and of course, the Columbia is an international river. The film is related only to the Canadian Columbia, but we have a section at the end about one ecosystem, and that the Columbia has to be managed as a single ecosystem. I don't have any inside information at all about the current negotiations between Canada and the US on the updating of the Columbia Treaty this year, except that as far as I know, they're still ongoing. But I can say that of all of the international rivers, the Columbia is probably one of the better governed rivers that cross international borders. If you think of rivers like the Mekong in the Thailand, and also the Nile in Egypt. There's many conflicts between upstream and downstream countries, and in some cases they're even at war with each other. So the ability for the Columbia to have shared benefits as a principle is very unique in international negotiations. Now, of course, Canada and the US are allies and close relatives, so you'd expect a collaborative arrangement in negotiating. But across the world, international agreements and governance of international water bodies is more often in conflict than it is in harmony. So I think the Columbia is a useful indicator of how nations can get on and look at shared benefits rather than one gaining at the expense of the other.
That's great. Thank you. And it is inspiring, and these hopeful messages really matter in classrooms with students of all ages, because the world, they have independent access to current events, and it's frankly frightening. So thank you for that hopeful story. Let's see we'll buzz through a few of these slides because they were just calling out our specific topics. And okay. So I will say this reconnection focus, that articulating it through that lens has actually come from working with this documentary. So that's one of the gifts of this project for me. Thank you, John. That the specialization I take is to go to the greatest depth that I can kind of fathom. And this work allows for that choice. You know, at that first depth, I just spoke about collaboration and hope. That's an important message. So if that's all we get from it, which I think, you know, if you put the film on for grade 4 learners, they would probably get that there's lots of people working together. They'd need some support with getting all sorts of the other material, but they'd feel encouraged that adults are trying to problem solve. And then these additional depths are about that truth seeking to do with you know, the relationship between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people now, and the historical basis that that comes from, as well as the challenges to worldview that it takes to negotiate between those two perspectives. And so those are the additional pieces that are really my passion in this work. And even presenting this to you, I feel like that message is going to come across. Whether it makes it to all of your learners, that's fine, but I value the opportunity to just encourage that depth. So we'll go to the next one. A message that I share often with young people is that it takes all of us to I guess encounter this journey of reconnection or reconciliation or healing. There's a whole bunch of words that kind of go together. And that whenever we can, we could be inspired by salmon or other ways of being inspired to be determined. But it's difficult work, and there's ways of inspiring ourselves and the learners that we're accountable to do the difficult pieces. Because if we don't, you know, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? So let's keep going. In this film, I really felt strongly the presence of culture, and I probably wouldn't been as motivated to work with it without that presence. And I really appreciated the effort to have all sorts of nation voices included, speaking for themselves, not always set side by side, because those of you who live in the Columbia Basin would know that there is very, you know, complicated relationships here. But truthfully, that exists anywhere where colonization has been the determining factor for how relationships to the land have looked for the past several hundred years or longer. And so really looking deeply at the generous sharing of culture that is present in the film is an opportunity that I think we should all take when we spend time with it. And here I think I had invited John to speak. John, were you involved in filming at these cultural locations? Did you get the benefit of that direct experience?
I did. The one that we witnessed was one in the Okanagan Falls, and actually my videographer Bowden was there. I didn't actually attend that particular event, but I've attended other events because this reconciliation and reintroduction ceremony has been going on for many, many years. And we just captured one in the filming of the year that we filmed, which was 2022. But I've been to other ones and I'm well aware of the cultural significance of salmon to the Indigenous people there.
Mm-hmm. And having ceremony filmed, you know, is a controversial thing to do. But again, that's I would say it shows that we're in a new place where the learning is so much more important than frankly protecting those practices. And that is a message that I've heard coming up in the research on this project and in other places, is that these ways of understanding need to be shared. So that's something I really appreciate about the film.
Now, Andrew, can I just make a comment on that? Because of the commitments we made to the 4 First Nations, because we also related to the Saanich, who are in Washington State. And we committed that we would send a draft of our video and narration to each of the 4 First Nations for their review and comment and revisions, which we did. And there was a 2-month period where we changed quite a bit of the film to reflect their sensitivities and make sure that their stories were properly identified and told on the documentary. And I think we may have been one of the first non-Indigenous filmmakers to have gone through that process, and it's very much appreciated by the First Nations.
Yeah, I really appreciate that extra detail, and it's definitely needed to go to that length, and I see the generosity of them sharing with you. So it looks like it was done in a good way, right? If they're trusting all of this important cultural knowledge with you. Okay, so something here to notice, and this session was invited for educators from grade 4 upwards. I have experience teaching Indigenous history and content to children as young as kindergarten. And I chose grade 4, knowing that perhaps some grade 4 teachers would feel like this was too much on a whole bunch of levels. And I just encourage you to maybe not dismiss it outright, because I definitely know that grade 4s I have worked with could handle it. And if we are too afraid to deal with these complicated topics, they will discover it on their own. They will make their own conclusions, and they really value the chance to talk through their fears, their sadness, whatever is coming up for them with adults who can handle that material. So again, this is like an encouragement to not veer away from the parts of the documentary that are hard, but maybe just provide lots of supports around it. Let's keep going then, Jade. How are we doing for time? I alluded to this at the beginning, but this idea of who we are really does matter in how we teach this material. If we had a little more time, I would do my full acknowledgement around where my ancestors come from. But for today, I will just share that this is a beautiful tool. The Honorable Marie Sinclair gave these 4 questions to our school district here in Nelson. And they're shared in various places. The curriculum document or the notes document I shared gives an article where you can work with those as well. And that gives you the basis in order to engage with reconciliation or reconnection in all the ways that might be present in you and in your room, because we're often teaching Indigenous learners, even if we are not Indigenous ourselves. That's just where we are at right now. Let's keep going. Same encouragement to bravery. I really feel like there's an incredible opportunity with this film to do this pre-teaching around what a treaty even is, how that exists in colonial history on these lands, whether that's in Canada or the US. There are example treaties that could be thought of as a comparison point. And then the Indigenous speakers who are talking about their rights with UNDRIP, well, it's really hard to talk about UNDRIP without also noticing that human rights as a concept wasn't really widely known until after the Second World War. So I'll make sure in this curriculum document that there are ways of accessing those that are fairly quick, but also provide, I guess, responsible background that if we have the opportunity to teach, we should. And then I'll also give links to these more, I guess, challenging themes and offer you the option to pay attention to what your context is, because I was teaching with someone who's from the States in my room earlier this week, and she said some of the things you're teaching are not permitted in our spaces in the US. So it's good to, I don't even know what those would be, because we are being encouraged to teach that here in Canada. So pay attention to your context. Let's see what's next here, Jade. Yes, I was going to ask Jonathan to speak with this, because I feel like you're the best person to kind of tell the story of the dams from these economic views.
Yeah, Andrea. Yeah, I think people should know that when the treaty was signed in 1964, so it's quite a different era in terms of the value sets we have. And in 1964, it was seen to be a commercial treaty. The principal benefits were power, hydropower, and flood control, and a little bit of water for irrigation for agricultural expansion in Washington State. So there was very little interest in ecosystem health and values. There was no interest in trying to protect the fish, but it is fair to say that the treaty dams in Canada were not the ones that blocked the fish coming into up the Columbia. It was the dams that were built in the US prior to the treaty in the 1930s and 1940s under the New Deal that blocked the fish coming into Canada. And so as I say, the treaty was primarily a mechanism to gain value in flood control, allow for the development of floodplains, both in Canada and more particularly in the States, and greatly increase the amount of electricity created through the hydro project. And even today, BC has roughly 50% of its hydropower comes from the Columbia. So it's a major factor in the way we manage our renewable energy. In terms of ecosystem health, that was the trade-off at the time. I think I tried to point out at the beginning of the documentary that the Columbia was a magnificent ecosystem prior to any of the dams going in 1930. But I think it was one of the major salmon producers in North America. And all of that value was lost over the period of 1930 to 1970 as the dams were created. And I think it's now one of the most dammed rivers anywhere, but certainly in North America as a result of all of that attention. And so we've lost a significant amount of ecosystem value in terms of riparian values, agricultural, forested land, fisheries, wildlife, etc., around the original lakes and lost in the valleys that were flooded. So because the treaty is being renegotiated and there is an opportunity to rebalance to some extent the economic outputs for hydropower and flood control with restoring some of these ecosystem values, that's what makes this Reconnection video so contemporary, because there is an opportunity that doesn't exist in many other river basins to make adjustments after 60 years. So I don't know if that covers your points, Andrea.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Okay, and then what we have here, so there's, I didn't count them, 5 slides, I believe, and it's just to give you a sense that there are so many voices in this film. I've pulled out quotes which exist in the notes document as well, so you can get an idea of just some of the varied ways of thinking. So we have, 12 Indigenous speakers, and then 4 from a science perspective, which as an Indigenous studies teacher, I really appreciate that is the balance, that there are more Indigenous speakers than there are Western speakers, and as well as some additional community leaders. And so I'll leave that, you can look at those separately, but I will say that that something I noticed looking at the different perspectives present is that through the Indigenous speakers, we get the full picture of culture. So we understand ways of thinking, ways of knowing, ways of being, ways of doing, and all of that is connected with community and so intergenerational connections, but also past and present connections. And so to ancestors and descendants, whereas the Western perspectives that are present in the film are largely science and politics and history, and there's some pieces that are missing from that, and that's what I was motivated to try and bring forward. So the pieces that were missing were this kind of heart-based focus on the humanities, how learners can connect to it from their own personal experiences, and also that just deepening into the social justice lens. And this here is just to give you an overview of what the film looks like. So there are 1, 2, 3, it's hiding. So I guess there's 6 chapters. That's right, 6 chapters. So you could split it up according to those chapters. How it worked for my learners was to do it actually in 3 pieces, and I will include those suggested excerpts. As well as I will include lists of, if you want to focus on a particular topic, I'll have a couple of segments that focus on each of those topics. Let's keep going here, and then we will head to breakout rooms. So just a list here of some things that will be in this curriculum resource. Just document types, and then the next slide has a list of some possible activities that you might be able to run with your learners. And then I think we'll just go to breakout rooms next. Is that what's, yes. So Jade is going to lead us, giving you the option to spend, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah, 7 or 8 minutes, Jade, with one of the 4 of us as speakers.
Indeed. So just in a moment, I'll launch, I'm going to stop sharing here, sorry, to make this easier. And I will start opening the breakout groups, and it should pop up on your screen. But if it doesn't, you can go to the bottom bar of your Zoom screen and hit more with 3 dots. I'm going to be in a room talking about science. We've got a small intimate group today, so it might be a great time to have a one-on-one or a one-on-two. Etienne is going to be talking about humanities, John about governance, and Andrew about allyship. So choose your own adventure and the one that speaks to you, and we'll take 7 minutes, and I'll see you on the other side. I'll bring us all back. I will bring us all back.
Okay. Jade, I just wanted to share one thing. So we do have a survey. So if you are not motivated to go to a breakout room and then come back and debrief, we'd still love it if you could fill in the survey as to how we might be able to improve on this curriculum resource or connect to your learners. Yeah, otherwise I'll see you in breakout rooms.
The link's in the chat, and if it doesn't serve you, please feel free just to hang out here, and the link's in there. You could just go around in and get your form on. Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
I'm going to join, and I'll see you there.
So I think we, John and Etienne, we also have to join a room. Otherwise, they'll be there by ourselves. How do we do that? It's under the More button, breakout rooms, and then we go to the one with our name on it.
Where are we going, Andrea? I don't see which one I should click. Oh, here we are.
just want to check in. Is anyone here because they're stuck here, or are people choosing to be here? You can just send me a chat or unmute.
I'm here, Jade.
Oh, hi, Rana. I don't know if it did that intentionally. Would you like to chat, or are you just quite happy having a peaceful moment?
Like my focus would be how to do this with kids in the class. So it just went to you automatically.
Oh, so do you want me to assign you?
Yeah, to oh, hi Jane. To
humanities?
Is that to ATN?
Yes. Okay, just give me one moment and I will
Okay, I'm keeping my screen off because it made my computer go weird.
Ooh, party time. Okay, I've sent you there.
Bye, Jane.
Hi. I just got
Jane.
kicked off.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, and I would like to join your room if that's okay.
Oh, I'd love that. Okay, and I think Bailey will leave you here. Rana, do you know where you're going? Can you click the button? Okay, Raina's gone. Bailey, are you happy just before we leave you for a moment?
I'm doing great. Yep, I'm just doing the survey right now. Thank you so much.
Oh, appreciate you so much. Thank you. Okay, Jane, I'm going to send us there. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great chat. We had a furious text chat because speakers weren't working, but we were just furiously typing. And I really enjoyed it. I hope other people did too. Okay, we have...
I think we'll close here. We just have a few short minutes. Our program has really been accelerated from the material that I had hoped to cover, and I did miss mentioning or introducing the fact that we are going to hear from Monica Nissen. Graham Lee Rollins is one of the speakers that was on one of those slides that went by really quickly, and their Wild Site Teach the Columbia curriculum has many connections to this film, of course. And as I understand it, that's a full course credit. So that might be Etienne's approach has been sort of small, mine's medium, and theirs is large. But hopefully you can find connections between both those resources. From the heart, I think we'll just leave it there, that's where the work that Etienne and I do comes from, and that Jade and I are starting to collaborate on, and you'll hear more of that through this network in the future. Thanks everyone for being here today, and I'll pass it to you, Jade and Monica. Thank you.
Wonderful. Just a little thought, if you do want to reach out, again, that's in the PDF. So feel free to connect if you want to dive into water resources. I'm going to send it over to Monica to share, and I'm going to bring up the websites for you so we can have a quick peek at them. Just give me a moment. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everybody, for this presentation and this curriculum that you're working on. There are so many different ways to this learning, and it's so important to have a variety of different perspectives and approaches. And yeah, I really look forward to checking it out. I guess one thing is, if you do see the film, you will see a little bit of footage of some youth out on the river, and I think, you know, a really important piece to that is just lived experience. And I think the kids who come with us, the students who come with us, really do get to have a powerful experience, and that learning is very special. They can earn a 4-credit course equivalent, a board-approved course. So it's for students anywhere in the Columbia Basin. Their credits can be transferred. They're offered through School District 8. Students are ages 15 to 18. The dates of the course are July 6th to 20th this year, and applications are open now. So if you know any youth who might be interested in that, we really look at many of the topics covered in the film. We learn from Indigenous knowledge keepers and leaders. We learn from folks who are experts in fisheries and ecology and hydrology and dam works, and we look at all different aspects of the river through history, so pre-dam and post-dam and in the future. And we have a whole session when we do this renegotiation of the Columbia River Treaty, so that governance piece, and give the students an opportunity to play different roles as they learn through actually renegotiating themselves. And then the learnings from this 2-week field course, we were hoping that we could ripple them out just a little further. And so we created a curriculum that embodies a lot of those topics and themes, lesson plans and activities, including the renegotiation lesson, along with a number of other ones. And yeah, you can just check it out on the website. I realize we're heading for close here, but the links are there. And so I think they will go very nicely together with this film and the resource that you are creating, Andrea and Etienne. So thank you. The more of this kind of learning, the better. We need to learn about our place and our water, and how to become to engage citizens, I think, in standing up for it. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Monica. And I literally am going to take 30 seconds and just say, hey, look, we're a charitable nonprofit. And if you are going to get equipment, tools, or resources related to water that are around, you know, water testing kits or field guides and things, we'd love if you got them from us, because all of that goes, the proceeds go back into supporting getting kids outside for learning. And as I'll close, firstly, I just want to say thank you so much, Andrea. As an educator and a human, you've come into my life and you continue to bring passion and love and energy, as have people like Monica and Graham over the years. Jonathan, you're a new friend. Look forward to diving in there more, and with you, Etienne, as well. To the people that joined us, whether you're live or not, thank you so much for caring, because water is life, and this kind of work just shows how beautiful cross-curricular work can be in linking humanities, science and art and creativity. And I just think it's incredible work. And to close, I'm going to read just like 2 pages. This is The Heart of the River. It's a book by Eileen Delahanty Perks, which is about the Columbia River. And I'll just read you this. It's told from the perspective of the river, and I'm just reading the last couple of pages. But it says, "Now I am a river whose heart struggles to pulse with the rhythms of life. I am a river whose work has been interrupted by a prosperity I do not recognize, and whose spirit is impoverished and silenced. I wonder how the people pale as river stones could understand so little about my purpose and what I was born for, to find my way with great freedom and power to the sea. But I am still hopeful. Someday I will again be able to carry the salmon on the back of my currents. My tamwata will beat heart and strong as I move through the mountains to greet the sea. I will be able to share my spirit with the land and its people, for I am the giver of life and freedom. I am water, the heart of the landscape." So excited to be able to share this with students, of all the amazing energy and time and effort that you're putting in. Thank you so much. Don't forget to watch out World Water Day, March 22nd, to watch the full documentary, and then dive into some amazing lessons curated for you around it. Say goodnight. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Jade, for
Thank
hosting.
you.